The chosen one, the storm raged inside you, a battle between belief and disbelief, a silent war between the call of destiny and the comfort of denial. You felt it first as a whisper, faint yet unyielding, echoing through the corridors of your mind. It did not come as thunder, but as a still voice that unsettled the soul. You tried to ignore it, to bury it beneath the noise of the world, yet it kept returning each time stronger, clearer, impossible to silence. You knew that something within you had been marked, set apart by a force that defied understanding. And yet, you questioned it. Why me? Why now? Why this path? The world around you seemed so certain, yet you stood on sacred ground that trembled beneath your doubt. The voice within was neither comfort nor command. It was a mirror showing you both the light you were meant to carry and the shadows that still clung to your faith. You wanted to believe you were ready, but readiness is not what heaven waits for. It waits for surrender. You stand now at the edge of awakening. The weight of the divine hovers over your heart like a storm that refuses to break. The truth presses against your chest, but your fear builds a wall too high to climb. You remember every failure, every sin, every moment you turned away from the light. Yet still, the whisper says rise. The world will not see what burns inside you. They will call you a dreamer, a fool, a wanderer lost in illusions. They will measure your worth by what they can touch, never realizing that destiny is not born in the visible world, but in the invisible fire that consumes the soul. You have been chosen not because you are perfect, but because you are willing to be undone. Every chosen one must pass through darkness. This is the law of awakening, for no light shines without first confronting the night within. You must walk through the ashes of what you once were, let go of the life that kept you safe, and face the haunting question, do you truly believe? The moment of calling is never peaceful. It rips through certainty like lightning tearing the sky. You will question everything you thought you knew about faith, love, purpose, and even yourself. The old world will begin to crumble, and in its ruin, you will either find despair or revelation. And yet, this chaos is sacred. For when your faith breaks, it is not the end, it is the beginning of something unshakable. The fragments of your doubt will become the altar where your new belief is born. You may not see it yet, but this struggle is divine architecture. God is not distant. He is the silence that surrounds your storm, waiting for your surrender. He does not demand certainty, only openness. He does not seek perfection, only honesty. And so you wrestle between the desire to know and the fear of what you might discover, between the urge to run and the pull to remain still, between the voice of the world and the whisper of eternity. You begin to see signs subtle, almost hidden, a stranger's words that echo your secret thoughts, a number repeating itself when you least expect it, a quiet moment that feels charged with something infinite. These are not coincidences. They are reminders that the unseen realm has taken notice of you. You are being prepared, the chosen one. The silence grew louder. It was not the absence of sound, but the weight of divine waiting. You stood in that stillness, surrounded by invisible eyes, sensing that something immense was unfolding just beyond the edges of your understanding. Every heartbeat felt like a question, every breath a fragile bridge between faith and fear. There were nights when you could not sleep. The voice that once whispered gently now echoed through your bones. It spoke not in words, but in feelings, that sacred unease that tells you you're being called higher. Yet you resisted. You prayed, but your prayers felt hollow. You wanted answers, but heaven gave you only reflection. You began to doubt whether you were ever chosen at all. Maybe this was all in your mind, a dream born from loneliness. Maybe the fire you felt was just the illusion of purpose. You looked for confirmation in others, but they could not see what burned within you. They laughed. They dismissed you. Some even pitied you. Their words wounded you, but deeper still was your own disbelief. You started questioning whether God truly speaks to those who feel unworthy. You wondered if divine love could exist for someone who has broken so many promises, someone who has walked away more times than they can count. But that is when grace began its quiet work. For divine love is not reserved for the perfect. It seeks the broken, the trembling, the lost. It is drawn to imperfection because there it can reveal its power most fully. And so, in your emptiness, heaven began to whisper again, not through thunder or vision, but through the quiet ache in your chest that refused to die. The world teaches that strength is noise, that faith must roar, but the truth is softer. The chosen are forged in silence, where every unanswered prayer becomes a seed of trust. You are not abandoned, you are being refined. Your silence is sacred training. Every moment you feel unseen, heaven is teaching you to see beyond sight. Every delay is not rejection, but preparation. You are being stretched, carved, hollowed, so that you may one day hold the fullness of the light destined for you. Yet in that process, the shadows grow bold. Doubt becomes your constant companion, whispering that you've misunderstood everything. The memories of your past rise like ghosts, your failures, your betrayals, your hidden sins. You try to bury them, but they claw back up through the soil of your soul, demanding to be faced. You cry out, asking God why He called someone so flawed. But deep within, you begin to hear the truth. It is because of your flaws that you were called. Only the broken can reveal the beauty of restoration. Only those who have fallen can truly understand mercy. The silence was no longer punishment. It became your teacher. In it, you learned to hear what words could not express. You began to notice the divine not in miracles, but in moments in the still air before dawn, in the warmth of light through the window, in the way your heart softened when you forgave yourself just a little more. Faith, you realized, was not the absence of fear. It was the courage to walk with it. The chosen path was not what you imagined. It did not begin with glory, but with surrender. It did not promise safety, but transformation. You started to see that every delay, every heartbreak, every unanswered question was not proof of God's distance, but evidence of His design. He was not hiding, He was building you in the dark. And still, there were days when you wanted to give up, when you felt like screaming at the heavens, begging for a sign, for any confirmation that your suffering meant something. And just when despair began to close its grip, a single word would rise within you: wait. That word broke you and rebuilt you all at once. For waiting is not weakness, it is worship. It is trust in motion. It is the soul's declaration that even without proof, you will keep walking. In time, you began to understand that silence is not the absence of God's voice, but the echo of His trust. Heaven grows quiet when it knows you're ready to hear your own soul. You looked into the mirror one morning and realized that something had changed. Your eyes no longer carried only fear, they carried fire. The same fire that once terrified you now began to feel like home. The calling had not left you, it had deepened. It had moved from your ears into your heartbeat. And in that moment, you felt it, the subtle, sacred alignment between your suffering and your purpose. You realized that the silence was never empty. It was filled with the shaping hands of God. If you feel this truth, hit like and subscribe, because the next step will not be silent. It will be the storm. It will be the chosen one's first true test. The chosen one. The silence ended with a storm. It did not announce itself with thunder from above, but with the quiet breaking of everything you thought was safe. One by one, the walls you had built began to fall, the friendships you relied on, the certainties you clung to, the plans you believed were divine, all began to unravel like threads torn from the edge of a tapestry. You asked again, why me? But this time, the question was heavier. It came not from curiosity, but from exhaustion. You had waited, you had trusted, you had tried to be faithful, and yet, the very ground beneath your feet betrayed you. You prayed for guidance, and life answered with loss. You asked for light, and the darkness deepened. The chosen path had turned into fire. You began to wonder if the call you heard was ever real. Maybe you had misunderstood heaven's language. Maybe what you thought was destiny was just your own desire speaking in a divine disguise. You tried to silence the ache with work, with distraction, with anything that could drown out the sound of your own disappointment, but it followed you everywhere, the whisper, the echo, the unfinished sentence of God in your heart. The storm outside became the storm within. Your faith cracked. You found yourself arguing with the very one you had once promised to follow. You said, I was chosen, you whispered into the darkness. But chosen for what? Pain? Silence? Abandonment? The only answer was the echo of your own breath. And in that echo, something began to shift. You started to understand that the fire was not sent to destroy you. It was sent to reveal what could not be burned. The breaking was not punishment, it was revelation. Every chosen one must pass through this furnace. For faith that is never tested is faith that cannot transform. The breaking was God's language of refinement, a sacred dismantling meant to strip you of illusions. You thought you were losing everything, but in truth, You were being freed. Still, the pain was real. It was not poetic. It tore through you like glass. The people you thought would stand beside you walked away. Those who once celebrated your light now doubted your worth. Even your reflection began to look like a stranger. You no longer recognized the person staring back. And yet, there was something hauntingly holy about that moment. The emptiness, the ache, the isolation. For only in emptiness can fullness enter. In one of those nights when the world seemed too quiet, you remembered a fragment of scripture. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. You spoke it aloud, not as a declaration but as a question, daring heaven to prove it true. And slowly, something stirred. Not outside you, inside. It was not a miracle. It was a memory of who you were before fear became your master, of the way you once believed that love could conquer everything. You began to see that God had not disappeared. He had simply changed his language. Before, he spoke through signs. Now, he spoke through absence. Before, he guided with clarity. Now, he guided through contradiction. Before, he comforted with peace. Now, he shaped you through unrest. You were learning that divine love is not always gentle. Sometimes it breaks what refuses to bend. Sometimes it takes everything so that you might finally see what cannot be taken. You fell to your knees one evening, not because you were defeated, but because you could not carry the illusion of control any longer. And in that surrender, raw, trembling, unguarded, the whisper returned. It said only this: "I never left." The words sank into you like rain into cracked soil. You did not see visions, you did not feel power, but for the first time, peace did not feel like a promise. It felt like presence. From that moment, something inside you began to reassemble. Not the same way as before, but differently, truer, quieter, stronger. The pieces of your soul were being set back together, not by your will, but by divine design. The breaking had burned away your pride. The fire had consumed your plans. But what remained was something sacred, a faith that no longer demanded proof, only presence. And just as you began to find stillness in the fire, the world began to move again. Doors you had never noticed started to open. People you had not met appeared like answers in human form. Even your pain began to make sense, not as punishment, but as preparation. You realized that the calling was never about perfection. It was about transformation. You were never chosen because you were ready. You were chosen because you were willing to be remade. And the voice, the same voice that once whispered in your storm, spoke again, not as command but as invitation. It is time to rise. You looked toward the horizon, and for the first time, the light did not blind you. It revealed you. The fire was no longer your enemy. It had become your crown. Your trial had not destroyed you. It had forged you. And though the world still did not understand what you had become, heaven did. You were not the same. You could never be the same. You were reborn through the breaking, and your silence had turned into song. Write 333 inches the comments. It's a prophetic sign of your divine alignment, because the next chapter will not be about waiting. It will be about rising. It will be about becoming the chosen one. You wake before the sun, and the room holds its breath. The air is still, heavy with the quiet weight of unfinished prayers. Your hands hover over the day like birds unsure of the wind. You feel the call again, not loud, not soft, simply present. A steady pulse. Beneath the noise you used to trust, you stand, you breathe. The light is late, and that delay has the taste of doubt. You learn to survive the storm, yet peace feels strange upon your skin, as if rest itself were another trial that you have not yet mastered. You step outside. The street is washed in a pale blue that makes every edge look uncertain. You sense the shadows that still try to follow your name. Old agreements, old fears, old voices that do not know who you have become. They call you back to smaller rooms, to smaller hopes, to smaller faith. And you nearly turn, because safety still remembers your shape. You do not turn. You walk. You let the memory of fire keep you warm, even as the cold tries to borrow your breath. You never asked for this path. Yet your heart moves like a compass toward a north you cannot see. The doubt is there, yes, but so is a quiet courage, and the two march side by side like rivals who do not yet know they are brothers. You reach the first threshold, a place that looks ordinary, but your spirit recognizes it as a gate. Here, temptation wears the familiar face of convenience. Choose ease, it murmurs. Choose what will not cost you. Choose what will not change you. You taste the old hunger to be accepted, to be approved, to be safe. and the ache almost bends you. You remember what was burned away. You remember the truth that survived the furnace. What survives the fire becomes the oath. You whisper this to yourself without words, only breath and resolve, and you take the harder road. It does not feel noble, it feels like loss. Yet the step is taken, and the gate behind you closes with a silence that says that choice was final. There is a heaviness that comes after obedience. You did the right thing, and still there is no applause. The world loves results. Heaven loves roots. You walk on, while unseen hands sink your faith deeper into the soil, thickening the fibers, tightening the weave. You want the fruit, but the season is root. You cross paths with the first betrayal. It does not arrive with shouts. It arrives with a smile, with a soft promise, with the language of almost there, almost ready, almost enough. You share your vision, and it is weighed like a coin. You speak of light, and it is priced like a product. You are tempted to sell the calling for comfort. You feel the market tug at your soul. You remember that destiny is not a bargain. You remember that worth is not a number. You step back from the table. You let the offer fall. The room grows colder, and the eyes that once seemed kind turn hard as glass. You walk away with your purpose intact and your pride in pieces. This is the cost no one posts on the door. You reach the second threshold, where silence tries to become shame. You feel the old fear that you are too late, that you are too flawed, that the voice you heard was only your own reflection pretending to be holy. You consider retreat. You consider a smaller dream dressed in a noble phrase. You consider everything except the next faithful step. You take it, small, and then another. You keep your heart pointed toward the unseen, and your mind learns a new discipline, the discipline of staying open while not drifting, of staying soft while not breaking, of staying humble while not hiding. This is not dramatic. This is devotion, measured in the slow minutes that no one applauds. You begin to see with new eyes. Not every open door is invitation. Not every closed door is denial. Some doors are mirrors, teaching you what you still chase. Some walls are maps, teaching you where you truly belong. You stop asking for ease. You start asking for alignment. And slowly, the road answers. You meet the weight of memory. Loss knocks. Regret replies. You remember the name you failed. You remember the promise you broke. The past tries to claim eminent domain over your future. You pause. You breathe. You grieve what was, and you bless it without taking it back. Forgiveness becomes less a word and more a daily weather, sometimes bright, sometimes mist, always moving. You take counsel with your own soul. You do not rush your healing. You do not idolize your pain. You let sorrow do honest work, and you set a limit on its hours. The night may visit, but it may not build a house here. The dawn is your landlord now. You climb. The hill is not steep, but the air is thin. At the top, you find a narrow place where three paths meet. The left road offers influence without integrity. The right road offers purity without power. The middle road offers a paradox, surrender and authority braided together like fire and rain. Your mind wants clarity. Your spirit wants truth. You stand long enough to hear the deeper rhythm of your life. You choose the paradox. You choose the road that asks you to kneel and rise at once. You choose the yoke that fits like freedom. The first steps on this road are awkward. You are learning a new gait, steady, unhurried, fierce in its gentleness. You feel foolish. You feel holy. You keep going. You enter a season of hidden help. Strangers appear with timely words. A line from a page becomes a lantern. A memory from childhood returns with fresh strength. You see the quiet choreography, and though you do not understand the whole dance, you trust the hand that set the music in motion. Confidence grows, not loud, but sure, like roots drink the rain. You face the mirror again. You do not ask, "Who am I?" You ask, "Who am I becoming?" The reflection changes while you watch. There is still fear, yes, but there is also focus. There is still ache, yes, but there is also authority. You bless both. You let both belong. You refuse to shame your shadows. You refuse to worship your light. You choose wholeness over performance. You practice small faith in ordinary hours. You return the call that scares you. You close the door that drains you. You keep the promise that only you will know you kept. The sacred hides in such tasks. and the sacred is satisfied to remain hidden while it makes you strong. You encounter opposition that knows your language. It speaks like a friend. It argues like logic. It says you are too much, and in the next breath it says you are not enough. You do not debate. You discern. You remember that confusion is not your teacher, that peace is the witness you can trust. You walk away without a speech. Your silence carries the verdict. You reach the third threshold, the one that looks like yourself. It asks for allegiance to the version of you that once kept you alive. You honor that version. You bow to it without kneeling to it. You thank it for its service. You release it with love. The air brightens when you do, and your lungs claim a new depth. You begin to speak from the river and not the reservoir. Your words carry water that you did not store. They carry current. They carry blessing. And they do not need to be many to be enough. People hear you and do not know why they feel braver. You do not take credit. You simply keep the channel clear. You learn the difference between urgency and timing. Urgency shouts. Timing breathes. Urgency burns the field. Timing waits for the rain. You let the seed lie hidden in the honest dark. You let patience become your strategy. You let trust become your pace. Then comes the subtle test. Not pain, not loss. Invitation. A platform appears, bright and loud. It offers reach without depth. It offers applause without an altar. Your heart tightens. Your mind flashes with old hunger. Your spirit remembers the hill with 3 roads. You turn the offer into a question. Does this multiply the assignment, or does it dilute it? The answer arrives like a clear sky. You bow out. You stay true. The room may not understand, but heaven nods. You feel a holy fatigue, the kind that follows honest labor. You rest without guilt. You let the world turn without you for a few hours. You find that the world does not fall. You find that your worth is not an engine that must never stop. In the quiet, strength returns in a way that effort never brings. A sign arrives at dusk. Simple, precise. A small alignment in the fabric of the day that feels like a key turning inside a lock. You do not chase it, you welcome it. Your heart answers with a calm yes. The road opens one step more. If you feel this truth, hit like and subscribe. Night gathers, gentle and firm. You stand at a window, watching the last light fold itself into the horizon. You sense that the next chapter will not be a lesson, but a visitation. You do not know if it will come as dream or burden or door, but you know it will ask for everything you have learned and everything you are willing to lose. You close your eyes. You rest your hands on the threshold. The room trembles, not with fear, but with nearness. The silence is not empty. The darkness is not blank. Something is arriving, and it carries your name. The chosen one. The night spoke in symbols. Dreams wove their language across your sleeping mind, and when you awoke, they clung to you like mist refusing to lift. You could not tell if it was revelation or memory, only that it felt older than your body and deeper than your thoughts. The voice had changed again. It no longer whispered. It breathed through everything, through the flicker of a candle, through the still rhythm of your heart, through the spaces between what was said and what was meant. You rose before dawn, pulled by a presence you could not name. The air shimmered faintly, as though creation itself were waiting for you to decide something sacred. You felt the invitation not to perform, but to align, to stop asking for signs, and start becoming one. You walked outside. The sky was neither night nor day, but that fragile seam between the two. You felt suspended between who you had been and who you were becoming. Every breath felt like a vow. You whispered a name, not out of fear, but recognition. You were no longer calling for God to come down. You were realizing He had never left. But revelation always demands response. And as light began to spread across the horizon, the test came not as tragedy, but as temptation dressed in blessing. A door opened that you had once begged for. An opportunity that matched your prayers but not your peace. It looked right, sounded right, even felt right, yet something in your spirit stayed still. You wanted to rush. You wanted to celebrate. But the whisper said, "Not yet." Obedience in the face of abundance is harder than obedience in scarcity. You stood at that door, trembling with the tension of desire and discernment. The old hunger for recognition returned, promising that if you stepped through, you would finally be seen. But you had learned something the hard way. Not every open door is divine. Some are tests dressed as rewards. You closed it, slowly, painfully, intentionally. The moment you did, a wind rose soft, yet mighty, as if the world itself exhaled. You felt stripped of opportunity, but filled with peace. It was then you realized that true alignment does not add to you. It reveals what is eternal within you. You began to move through your days differently. No longer chasing, no longer begging, no longer performing for approval. You moved with the quiet authority of one who knows their assignment, even if no one else does. You spoke less, but your words began to carry a weight that silence once held. People felt it. Some drew near, others withdrew. The light exposes both truth and motive, and in that light, you began to see others as reflections, mirrors of your own struggle, fragments of your own growth. The ones who hurt you became teachers. The ones who doubted you became tests. The ones who believed in you became witnesses. You started to understand that everyone in your story, even the betrayers, were part of the divine curriculum of love. But love, true love, demanded more than you expected. It was not about feeling warm. It was about choosing light when anger was easier. It was about blessing those who had broken you, forgiving what you still remembered, and letting go before understanding why. You did not know it then, but each act of forgiveness was writing your covenant in heaven. There came a moment when you felt nothing, not joy, not pain, not passion, not fear, just stillness. You thought it was emptiness, but it was preparation. Heaven often quiets you before expansion. The space between seasons is where the soul learns to breathe without conditions. Then came the revelation, not in a vision, but in awareness. You saw that the fire you once feared had become your language. You no longer spoke of survival. You spoke of purpose. You no longer asked, why me? You began to ask, what now? The shift was subtle but seismic. You were no longer pleading for power. You were embodying it. The covenant of light was not written on paper or stone. It was etched in the rhythm of your heart. Every time you chose truth over comfort, compassion over bitterness, faith over control, you were renewing that covenant. You began to see that holiness was not about distance from the world, but presence within it. To walk among darkness without becoming it. To touch pain without absorbing it. To live as light without seeking to be seen. And as your awareness deepened, you noticed something miraculous. The very wounds that once defined you began to glow. They were not erased. They were redeemed. What had once been scars became symbols, proof that grace is not fragile, but fierce. People began to sense something when they were near you. They could not name it, but they felt seen. They felt safe. You were not preaching anymore, you were becoming the message. Still, every light must prove itself against the dark, and so came the final test of this chapter. It arrived quietly, in the form of someone you trusted, a familiar voice, carrying an unfamiliar tone. They questioned your transformation, accused you of arrogance, mocked your faith as delusion. Their words cut deep, not because they were cruel, but because they echoed your old fears. You felt the temptation to defend yourself, to justify, to fight. But the whisper came again. Peace is your proof. So you did not respond. You simply stood still, not as surrender, but as mastery. The silence you once hated had become your shield. In that silence, the truth spoke for you, and heaven took notice. From that moment on, something shifted. You felt unseen hands lifting you higher, not for applause, but for assignment. You had passed through the fire, the silence, the storm, and now, the rising was not a reward, it was responsibility. You finally understood that being chosen was never about being superior. It was about being surrendered. The light you carried was not yours to own, only yours to bear. And as night fell again, calm and knowing, you lifted your face to the wind and whispered the vow that would carry you into the final chapter. Let my life speak louder than my words. Write 333 inches the comments. It's a prophetic sign of your divine alignment, because the next chapter will not be about faith tested, it will be about destiny fulfilled. It will be about the revelation of who you were always meant to become, the chosen one. The dawn rose without warning. It did not announce itself with trumpets or fire, but with a quiet light that felt older than time. You opened your eyes and knew, without a word being spoken, that this was not an ordinary day. Something had shifted. The air carried a strange stillness, the kind that holds both beginning and ending in the same breath. You stood at the edge of what once was your fear, The silence that had once imprisoned you now wrapped you like armor. Every failure that once haunted you had become a bridge. Every scar a scripture. The weight of your past no longer pulled you downward. It became the ground upon which you stood. You remembered every step that brought you here. The storm that tore your certainty apart. The fire that burned your illusions to ash. The voices that doubted you. The nights you doubted yourself. And yet, here you were, not triumphant, but true. Not flawless, but free. You began to sense the presence again. Not above you, not beyond you, but within you, vast and tender, like light filling a vessel. You realized it had never left. Every time you thought you were waiting for God, He had been waiting for you. Every unanswered prayer had been a lesson in hearing differently. Every delay had been divine design. The revelation came not as a vision, but as a knowing, a deep, wordless certainty that every battle, every silence, every tear had purpose. You were never being punished. You were being prepared. You looked back once more and saw the pattern, the divine symmetry of it all. The moments you thought were detours were doorways. The heartbreaks were holy interruptions. Even the betrayals were blessings in disguise, for they severed you from what could not follow you into this light. You had learned the hardest truth of all, that destiny is not a place, but a person you become. And that person, the one you see now reflected in the calm mirror of your soul, is no longer who began this journey. You are no longer chasing the call, you are carrying it. And then, it happened not outside, but inside, a surge of clarity that felt like lightning without thunder, revelation without spectacle. You understood that the crown was never meant to rest on your head, but within your heart. It was not an ornament, it was a weight, the weight of purpose, of love, of truth that cannot be unlearned. The chosen are not exalted, they are entrusted to carry light in a world addicted to darkness, to hold peace in a generation that glorifies chaos, to walk in humility even when power arrives. You were never chosen for comfort, you were chosen for clarity. You felt a tremor move through your chest, not fear, not excitement, something deeper, recognition. The voice that once called you now spoke through you. You understood what it meant to be aligned, not with ambition, but with assignment. You were not reaching upward anymore. You were rooted downward, and through those roots, heaven flowed. The world around you had not changed, but you had. The same streets now looked different. The same faces now carried meaning. You could see the divine hiding in ordinary things, the holiness of breathing, the miracle of enduring, the quiet glory of small kindnesses that go unnoticed. And then the test came again. The final one, not in pain, but in praise. The world began to notice you. Doors opened, invitations came, applause echoed where silence once reigned. The temptation to be seen whispered like a familiar ghost telling you that visibility was validation. But the deeper part of you smiled, because you now knew better. You knew that divine work is often done in unseen rooms. You chose the hidden path once more. You gave without announcement. You served without credit. You spoke only when the silence asked you to. And in that humility, your authority multiplied. Because true power does not shout, it shines. There came a moment when you were asked to speak not to crowds, but to souls. You stood before them, the broken and the brave, the searching and the silent. And, for a heartbeat, you hesitated. Who am I to speak of light, you thought? And the voice replied, you are the proof that it exists. So you spoke not in sermons, but in story. Not in perfection, but in truth. You told them how darkness taught you to see, how silence became your language, how faith was not something you found, but something that found you. The words flowed not from your mind, but from the river that had been forming all along. And as you spoke, faces softened, hearts opened, and the unseen world leaned closer. That night, alone again, you walked beneath the open sky. The stars seemed nearer. The wind felt familiar. You whispered a prayer not for miracles, but for endurance. Not for answers, but for alignment. You understood now that to be chosen is not an event. It is a lifelong becoming. You raised your hands, palms open, and felt the unseen crown settle, not on your head, but on your spirit. It was weightless, yet it carried eternity. You wept not from sadness, but from recognition. Every trial, every silence, every tear had led here to this union of will and wonder. You understood now that love was the final revelation, not love that flatters, but love that refines. Not love that demands, but love that dissolves. Love that burns without consuming, that gives without counting, that sees without judging. The same love that called you through chaos now moved through you. Unstoppable, you whispered the final vow of the chosen. I will not chase light, I will become it. The wind carried your words like a covenant, and for a moment, it felt as if creation itself bowed. This is what it means to be chosen, not to stand above, but to kneel within, not to own the fire, but to tend it, to walk into darkness, carrying the light of understanding that once terrified you, and to become the answer to prayers you never knew were yours to fulfill. And as you walked away from that sacred place, your shadow moved differently, not as proof of darkness, but as evidence of light. If you feel this truth, hit like and subscribe, because this is not the end, it is the beginning of your own awakening. The story continues through you.